So, welcome to the very first episode of Big Risk Energy. I'm your host, Roei Samuel. For context, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've built multiple businesses, including one that I scaled to 8 million monthly users and sold to a gaming business in 2018. I've been an angel investor for the last 5 years, and I'm very passionate about mental health and neurodiversity, suffering from severe ADHD and dyslexia myself. On this podcast, Big Risk Energy, we'll be talking to politicians, scientists, and everyone in between. And we'll be talking to these people about risk. Risks they've taken in their lives, risks they've taken in their careers, when they paid off and when they didn't. And on today's episode, I'm blessed to be joined by the one and only Yoann Pavy. Yoann was the head of social for Deliveroo, the head of performance for Perkbox, the head of digital for Depop, and an all-round growth guru. Yoann, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. That's great.
So let's dive straight into it. You started off as an engineer and made that decision to jump into being a marketeer. So you immediately went in with a big risk there. So tell us about that.
Yes. I come from France, and I followed kind of the 80s kid path of following what my parents wanted me to do, and I was kind of good in math and physics, so went into engineering as like the most logic path for where I was at the time, and I went all the way through to actually starting a career as an engineer, so more in the project management side of engineering, and in very traditional industries. So I think I started, I actually never worked in France. I started straight away in the UK, more in the Bristol area, in the space field.
Okay.
For my first job, like a year and a half, trying to set up an actual, not startup, more like a scale-up French space agency.
Wow.
Engineering agency, and I was trying to build their business in the UK as a 21-year-old kid.
Wow, I didn't actually realize that. So how did you get from France to Bristol?
Because they wanted to get more European programs wins in terms of like pitching for them. And being in south of France was kind of a blocker for more European projects. So they needed someone who kind of spoke English. Even now, I'm like,
we're getting there, don't we?
But going into the UK and kind of be there to set the function in this country to try and be in those pitches and win contracts, which I didn't. It was really hard, and I kind of like survived for like almost 2 years in that job. But I got an opportunity to move to London, which was more attractive for me from a lifestyle point of view. And I was like, I need to go to the big city.
Nothing against Bristol.
No, nothing. I still go back there sometimes. It was great. I was actually living in Cardiff for information. I think it was cheaper for them to like place me there, so I was driving to Bristol a lot. Yeah. Anyway. Another story for another time. I moved to London to go to Ford. So I moved to automotive, which I was a project manager, like managing engineers to launch certain cars in certain countries, like South America, Asia, etc. And I did that for almost between 3 and 4 years. And I got gradually not bored of it, but like got out of it, kind of grew out of it.
But it's interesting because at that point, you must have been on a certain trajectory, and with a company like Ford as well, if you can navigate your way to that top of that corporate ladder, there's potential big payout there. So it's a big risk.
Yeah, it is. And I was it's not like I was set, but I was on a path of like, I had my own cubicles and like all my engineers colleagues that their diplomas on the wall with like 30 years diploma, 35 years diploma of like being at Ford for that long and like building their career all the time, etc. And that didn't have the same effect on me that it did on them. Like for me, it was like, oh shit, I don't know if we can curse on this, but like I was like, oh my god, like this is what is like is that going to be my life now for the next 30 years? And that got more and more scary for me, and I think realized soon enough that I needed to like find something else.
Which is really interesting, because I think for certain psychological types,
Yeah.
that fear of this being the next thing,
Yeah, yeah.
that's actually the risk.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Yeah.
the risk, because you never go beyond those walls. So at that point,
Yeah.
it becomes almost like a no-brainer that you've got to start following the passion, right?
Yeah. So that's where the kind of the idea grew in my head that I needed to find something that I like better, and like who am I? Like, what do I like and stuff. And I always knew I had quite a big creative mind that wasn't used at work, but I was using a lot outside of work. Whether it was like interest in music or art or design or marketing, even like just like looking at communications in general, and our company were like expressing that. And it was also the rise of like smartphones and social media and YouTube, Facebook, that kind of grew in my earlier years as an engineer, and that's where all of this started, social media. So so that piqued my interest, and that's where I kind of got lucky into finding this post from an ex colleague of mine from uni that was looking for like entry jobs, agency, account managers in London for a small Facebook partner shop that was working across multiple industries and clients to run Facebook ads. And I didn't know what it was. I was like, what the hell is this? But that sounds good. Like whatever this is, that sounds good. Because I'm spending a lot of time on Facebook at the time.
Yeah, especially at that time.
Yeah. And I was like, this is what I'm using. I love sharing, photos and what I'm doing and connecting with people. I'm living abroad, so I'm using it as a vehicle to like talk to my childhood friends and family all the time. And that kind of like, it was already very important in my life, I guess, as a lot of people. But I was like, I'm going to make this my thing. Like, I want to do this every day. So that's why I took the risk. Like one of probably the biggest risk I ever took in my career.
It's amazing. And then
to switch.
Well, it's a huge risk, and I think it's something which a lot of people struggle with. So many people I speak to, I'm sure the same, is they get into that stage in their careers where they're getting a bit bored. They're thinking about what's outside there. Now you're obviously an amazing example of when that can go incredibly well. And tell us about how did you come across Deliveroo? Because at that time Deliveroo was obviously not what it is now. Again, another risk, joining a startup.
Yeah. So I did about a year and a half at this agency.
Yeah.
That went super fast. I learned really quickly. I was slightly older than people joining that company at that time. Like most account managers were like 21, 22, and I was already 26.
Yeah.
It kind of made a difference and I came from an engineering kind of career, so I had kind of the maturity and like kind of the process in my head of
you were on it.
Yeah, if I want to be successful, I know what I have to do.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of showed very quickly. I had a lot of responsibility across like multiple clients, some of the biggest in the company at the time. Became the like technical account manager for that agency, setting up all the clients like integrations with measurement partners and things like that. So like I really like digged into like understanding how this works, deeply. And we went for a pitch to Deliveroo with the agency CEO at the time.
And did you guys know much about Deliveroo? Where were they in their
journey? He did. I didn't.
Okay.
I came here as the technical lead and be like, I'm gonna try and help like in the discussion to like try and pitch Deliveroo, which was not small, but still on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, like not everywhere in London.
So what year was this? When was this? Do you remember?
Was 2017.
Okay, fine.
2017, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was already Series B, I think, for Deliveroo, but like probably less than 150 employees.
Okay.
Just in London, and maybe 5 cities in the UK and just launched Paris. That was it.
Interesting.
So-
Because I remember discovering Deliveroo in 2015
Yeah.
when I started to rapidly gain weight, interestingly. Just
Okay.
happened to be at the same time.
Okay.
Don't know if
Okay.
the two were related. I was living in Shoreditch at the
Maybe,
time, but it
maybe.
potentially ruined my life. But,
Oh my God.
good marketing at least.
Yeah. So it wasn't, it wasn't the beginning of the really hyper growth phase
Yeah.
for Deliveroo, and they were looking for an agency to run their ads because they were going to put significant amount of budget into it to expand in what I didn't know at the time was going to be like 12 countries, literally 3 months in the job.
Wow.
So we went for that pitch literally the next day. The marketing director at the time, George, hit me up on LinkedIn and he was like, hey, look, are you interested in actually joining full time? I don't think we need the agency, but I think we need you.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to join as like their first digital marketer, literally, for the
Which
first
is-
channel.
It's amazing to think that
Yeah.
because now building a startup, to think that you could get to a Series B without having like
It's crazy,
do
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
insane that you can get to that level.
Yeah.
Now it's one of the first hires you've got to make.
It's mad because it's what happened again at Depop.
Yeah.
Like Depop was Series B, contacted me and told me we have no one. We're using this agency. We don't think we're doing it very well.
Yeah.
There's no one internally that does digital marketing.
Yeah.
We don't believe in it. Oh, that also what they told me.
Wow,
We don't believe
okay.
in it, but if you can come and like, are you interested?
So is this the sign of a truly great viral product where they can
I think
get...
so. And
Yeah.
I think that's what both times. I think the first time with Deliveroo, I didn't know. I was
Yeah.
I was still young and learning the ropes and understanding acquisition, retention, and the paid side, the organic side. I think everyone was kind of figuring out at the time. It was still the fairly early days of like heavy paid acquisition, the pros and cons of doing that. Now people are a lot more clued up as to like why not, what to do and what not to do at which stage
Yeah.
you're at. But back then it was still kind of the Wild West, it's like, and it was really a lot easier to raise VC money as well to fuel that, because that's what VC wanted, like growth at all cost. It doesn't matter your payback. We want a winner take all type of business. So
Profitability was a dirty word back then.
exactly, and Deliveroo the aim was to become like the number one in the world, minus the US, because that was kind of the untouchable, but everything else was like, we need to be number one. So spend as much as you need to get there. So that was quite interesting. But two times. The second time at Depop, I kind of followed that pattern.
Yeah.
Not at that time, I saw the pattern. I was like, okay, they've been running for 5-6 years, pretty much all organic and like really grassroots, local events, sellers markets, and they've never done any ads. And I'm like, wow.
It's crazy.
And they already have 6 million users.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So they didn't know that, but when they pitched me, I was like, this is gonna be, for me, it's gonna be an easy gig. Like I know it's gonna work. Like they don't know, but I think I know it's gonna work. And it worked. And then that's where I kind of took the ship.
That's really interesting. And do you think now because back then, and for sure with Deliveroo, maybe not Depop, but obviously platforms like Facebook, Instagram, you could go genuinely viral without putting any budget behind it. When we were running Real Sport, we used to run some campaigns and we would get millions of views with literally no spend whatsoever, which obviously would facilitate B2C companies getting that organic acquisition, maybe not in a way that we see now. Do you think the market's changed? Do you think that level of viral customer acquisition is still attainable in 2022?
I think so. For example, with TikTok, I think there's still a ton of opportunities with that platform to use organic to grow that fast. Unfortunately, when I was at Deliveroo, I was so focused on paid and acquisition because that's what I learned.
Yeah.
I kind of wrongly blindsided by the organic side of things. It was kind of, I was less interested by it or skillful. So I was really focused on acquisition. But I think I still think it's possible. Just need to find the new ways, the new channel to get that that free organic reach. Like LinkedIn, for example.
I was just going to say, we talk about LinkedIn so much. I mean, we've been working together probably about 18 months now, and LinkedIn is so important. I think it's such an amazing testing ground for good organic content
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah.
You know, if it
Yeah.
gets good organic traction on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
you know that you can really try and then amplify that on other platforms,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. But one of the reasons I wanted to move from B2C to B2B is because you could utilize LinkedIn in a way that you used to be able to utilize Facebook, Instagram, but you really
Yeah.
can't anymore.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think I like that even today, you know, if a piece of content doesn't work, you know pretty much straight away because it's not being pushed, whether it's on TikTok or on LinkedIn. Bit different on Instagram because it's kind of, I feel like there's no chance for any content to actually
Just
work.
pay to play now.
Yeah, it's just pay to play. But if you, on the opposite, if you do find a piece of content, like you said, that goes a little bit, not viral, I don't like the word viral, but like does better, then you can put a little bit of money behind that. And then you know it's going to be supercharged. So I kind of like that balance now, that you kind of know pretty quickly if something is going to work or not, and you can use paid to supercharge it. And there's new channels to do that. Like TikTok is brilliant for that. Like it works really well. We do that right now. Like we post every day, 7 days a week, at the company I am now at Nude. And when I see something that does a little bit better, like every day we post. So like it's easy to get the signals.
Yeah.
As soon as we get the signals, I put a little bit of money behind it. I know it's gonna get like 10x the amount. It's money well spent because you're getting the eyeball for like so cheap, the impressions and the awareness. So yeah, I still think it's possible. Yeah.
Really, really interesting. And going back to risks, because you're now at a very different stage in your career where you've got this track record, right? So now the risk is not losing it, you know. So how do you approach that? Like when you're looking at something new, Depop, Deliveroo, Perkbox, these names are, household names. Everyone knows these brands. The jobs you've done there are incredible. Now the risk is making sure that you can, keep it going. Because I think that the easy thing to do right now, if I was you, and obviously I'm not, but if I was you, you could set up a consultancy tomorrow.
Yeah.
I know with the businesses that we have unconnected, I could send you 1,000 businesses tomorrow. They're going to pay you, and you could go the safe route. Yeah. But you've gone the risky route of going again. What's the thinking there?
Yeah. So I think I genuinely love growing a business and being focused on a business. And if I see some disruptive potential in that industry, that's really gonna like attract my curiosity to like almost like a challenge. Like I have to make this a unicorn, like it has to work. And I did try actually last year before starting at Nude. So just a little parenthesis on Nude. It's a fintech app for first-time home buyers to help them save for their deposit. So
it's an awesome app, by the way. I use it. I highly recommend it.
It's really cool. So before that, I did have Nude in my roster as my own little agency shop, like Yoann Pavy. So I did that for 6 months, but I think I got attracted by the business, the team. The product was incredible already for like the size of the business and where they were at the time. In those 6 months, I saw the metrics and where we could take this. It felt like we were already post product market fit. So it was kind of the right time, but still a risk, still a seed stage company. Yeah. Much younger than when I joined those big names that we mentioned, but a bigger role for me, which means I can learn as the company grows as well, and genuinely another opportunity to have a third unicorn on my
It's pretty good. That's pretty good.
On my track record. That's my personal challenge.
You gotta go for the hat trick.
To make this a hat trick. Yeah. That's the idea. But
I'm sure the guys at Nude love hearing that.
Yeah, I'm sure. I get pretty obsessed by the numbers. I guess the quality for what I do for like growth and marketing. But yeah, I genuinely got really excited about the mission, helping first-time buyers. I think there's I actually read this morning. a very interesting idea in fintech where everyone's trying to bundle everything. There's an idea of bundling services, whether it's a savings app or current accounts and things like that. And what we're doing at Nude is like unbundling. We're doing the opposite, and we're focusing on just one thing, which is helping first-time buyers. Yeah. And I think that's fundamentally what attracted me, because it goes against everyone else's strategy, and we're really like going deep on that thing to maybe eventually rebundling in the future once we grow, right? But it's an idea that I think across industries works really well. If you can even make the parallel that's what Amazon did in the early days. They focused on books,
of course,
very, very well, and then everything kind of got attached to it. Same in the creative industry. You've got Adobe, who's arguably like the most like legacy creative tool suite of like tools you can buy, and now you've got Figma, Canva, like all these kind of tools that like unbundling what Adobe is doing, focusing on one thing, and then in the future, if they grow to being big enough, might recompose in the end and like add more things to it.
Which is a really interesting approach, and it makes total sense as well, especially in a backdrop now where people don't just want to see growth at all costs. If you're focused on your vertical, you can prove the unit economics work there. If you can prove that vertical has a good path to profitability, you're much more likely to be able to fund the exploration into other verticals and the rebundling than if you're saying we're going to do everything. We need 100 million, sorry, we're going to do everything all at once.
Exactly.
It's a much more compelling argument, especially with what's going on right now.
And it makes marketing easier, the messaging, positioning, all that stuff, it makes it crystal clear. So it was a risk, but calculated. Calculated risk,
Nice, love that, okay. And spoken a lot about your career, I feel like marketing, growth, these are things similar to being a founder where there's no ceiling to how much you can put in. You could work on this 24 hours a day. How do you balance that drive, that hunger, you want to make the third unicorn on the belt with, a balanced life?
So it's hard. Like I do have that discussion often with my wife. Because I do get quite obsessed with like what we're doing and my work, and but we've got two kids now, so I do take the time to spend time with them, and like 5-6 o'clock when they come back from school or nursery, like I do block sometimes in the morning or the afternoon, but besides that, I am constantly thinking about the mission and what we're trying to do. So I don't like to use the work-life balance too much.
So how do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's just about putting the right priority, be in the right space where you are at that moment, like focusing on where you are at that moment. So if I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. If I'm with my wife, I'm with my wife. But I don't put like a schedule, like a rigid thing around it. Like I really try to like manage it as I go. And luckily, I think there's more and more companies and startups that understand that. So still expecting growth and being quite aggressive in what they want to do, but at the same time managing people's priorities and agendas and being flexible around them.
Of course. So
it's not one size fits all. It's really like on a one-to-one basis. So like I managed to find my sweet spot for my lifestyle, and I think that's what works. I don't think you can call it work-life balance, but I don't know. I don't have a better word for it.
I call it being where you need to be. If you need to be with your kids at the time, you're with your kids. If you need to be with your wife, you need to be at work, you're going to be at work, and you know where it is that you're required to be at that time. But it's interesting as well, because like you said, for me, I think life is all about people, whether that's personal life, whether it's building a business, Connected now, we've got 50 people, and it's realizing that everyone's got their own psychological motivators, everyone's got their own psychological boundaries as well. And as you said, it's just about figuring out what works for everyone. Some people want to work more, some people want to work less.
Exactly. And you can't stop what someone wants to do if that person isn't that time and space where maybe they have less responsibility, they've got more hunger, and they want to like be more purposeful with their career and advance and bring more results. You can't slow that down, you know, like
totally.
it's up to them, and if you give the flexibility around that, then that's great. I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, totally. That's why culture is so important as well.
Yeah.
And how do you see culture within the teams that you build? Are you trying to look at the company culture around you and then, you know, distill that down, or do you bring a certain style now that you've got this track record? You know you've got the ability to come in and dictate. How do you see it?
I think I do bring my background with me, and like the way things were being done in those companies, and more from a process point of view, and like rituals, and like make sure we like talking at the right time about the right metrics, and that we're not like being blindsided by something else like that maybe isn't important for that moment in that company. So I do bring that, but I think personally I feel like I do bring my kind of style with me, you know, like I'm pretty relaxed, and I think I do talk to people quite often to like understand where they are like mentally, and if they're in the right space, and they're enjoying what they're doing, and it's not going too fast or is too stressful at that moment. I think I do bring a lot of that. I'm really mindful of that. Because you can't be, not everyone can be at 100% all the time, and it kind of comes and goes, and it's about like understanding where certain people are at, and we're not all at the same time at the same place, you know. So you know, even in a big team, small team, you see all the time, like some weeks you feel when some people in the team are more on it that week versus other people. It's about managing that and not expecting everyone to be at the same level all the time. So again, it goes back to like flexibility, not only in the hours of working or priorities, is also in like just the mental state of everyone.
Totally. It's really interesting. So when my last company was acquired, so the CEO who acquired us is a guy called Gary Cook, who was the CEO of Man City. He was on the board of UFC. He was the intrapreneur, before that was a term, of Nike Jordan, alongside Michael Jordan. Really, really awesome guy. And he used to tell us this story, which, as a United fan, I'm very glad he actually stole from Sir Alex Ferguson. So I can tell this story again with a clear conscience and not know that it's come from the CEO of Man City, is the Canadian geese. And they fly in this formation, and at different times, some of the geese will drop back, some will go into lead, because at different times they have the energy to go, and sometimes they need to go and be picked up in the draft. And it's the same with teams, right? It's understanding who's ready to lead at what point, who's got to drop back, and you know, at different time, making people superstars and understanding that you're going to have those peaks and troughs. So I totally agree.
Absolutely. And I make a lot of conscious and subconscious parallel with the fact that I played basketball for a long time, and there's a lot of teamwork. It's been a big word, you know, in startups for quite a few years now. But like what it actually means is there's a lot of parallel with like running a team and playing a team sport. So I think about that quite a lot. Like, you know, who's leading at the time. You know, the strategies around that, having subs, you know, like switching players, and like which having like diversity in talent and skill set. Like the parallels are like endless.
100%. It's so interesting, isn't it? There's so many sports. I don't know if it's just because we're sports fans that we do it, but sports analogies work so well in business.
It's true. It's the same. And like, I think recently I was thinking of something else when we talk about being in flow, you know, at work, when you feel like you're in that zone where like nothing can touch you, and you're making some progress, and there's like momentum and stuff. I actually physically remember that state playing basketball, you know, in like some moment for like a few minutes, you're like, it's like nothing can stop you, you know, everything goes in, all your teammates are aligned, and like everything flows naturally. Like I physically have memories of what it meant, you know, like in my body, you know.
It's really cool.
So like I do I do feel that sometimes at work, which is strange because it's a completely different thing. Like you're not running around and you're not.
Yeah.
But I can see the parallel.
But it's really interesting. I mean, I wouldn't say controversial, but I have unconventional views about reality. And I find it so interesting how your perception, how your mental state really can change the reality around you.
Yeah.
And it's, if you can unlock that flow, if you can unlock that state and understand the conditions that you need to create to replicate that, I find it fascinating. Because the thing is, genuinely one day, and I don't know if this is an ADHD thing, I don't know if this is a wider thing, but, one day, objectively, nothing may change. You may feel on top of the world. The next day you may feel like shit, although nothing's changed, right? It's all the perception. It's all that your view and your relationship with the reality around you. And it is fascinating. And they've been doing this in sports with sports psychologists and psychiatrists for so many years. It should probably be something utilized, and maybe it is. I mean, at Depop, Deliveroo, and these businesses got big. Is that something they ever implemented and focused on that? I guess a lot of early stage startups wouldn't be able to afford that sort of thing.
Yeah, not really. No, not really. Yeah. It was more like a personal kind of state. Sometimes with the team, but maybe not broader than that. Like within your own direct reports and direct teams. But I think it would be probably pretty hard to replicate at the scale of 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
But within your own team, it feels more manageable,
I think it will be the future. I think it will be the future. When you look at how people, and again, to go back to sports, but how people are, being so scientific with their understanding of performance. And I think you've had that for a while with executive coaches and that sort of thing. But I think really bringing the science in is going to be very, very interesting to see how that develops and evolves over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So and I've got a few questions I ask every guest I'd love to jump into.
Yeah.
We may have already answered the first one, so if so, you can either think of something else on the fly or just tell me you've already done it, which is, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken and how did it turn out?
Well, I think, we spoke about this at length, but I think it was changing careers, it was like jumping into, the abyss, I remember at the time, nothing was sure. I was, I took a massive pay cut, went back to, level 0 of my career. I had to learn everything in the pre-interview phase and almost do my 10,000 hours in the space of 2 months before having the first interview. So then I could be switched on almost like I was already doing the job, even though I'd never done it. I think that was the biggest risk. And telling my parents that and stuff, there was a lot involved in this, but at the time I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, I could do it.
Yeah, that's the time, right?
And yeah, exactly. And then I switched to suddenly I was, making, £1 pasta with, cheddar cheese for for 4 or 5 months every day, just to save money for rent,
Yeah. And that coming from a Frenchman must be painful.
It was painful.
A British person, that's pretty much normal cuisine.
Right? It's what you,
exactly.
It's meal deal.
That's what we grew up on.
Exactly. And a pack of crisps. But it was that. Yeah, that was the biggest thing.
Nice. Okay. Sure. And if you could do one thing differently in your career, what would it have been?
I think it's something that I still need to do is and it goes back to maybe the mental state or the balance, is trying to dissociate myself from the numbers. I am not the results of the business at that moment, because it does the opposite also happens, where things are not growing as well. I physically feel bad and I'm in a bad mood. It affects people around me, my family, my kids, and it's and I don't like it. I can recognize it. I can talk to my wife about it. She can see it, and I'm numbers are bad. She's I noticed, because you're in a shit mood. She knows before you know. You're in a shit mood, and I'm okay. So I think what I need to do differently is a bit of dissociating a little bit on that, just for my mental well-being.
I mean, it's a really interesting one, because we have founders who come on this, and it's the same thing, right? It's understanding that. Yeah, and it's so difficult. I think especially for people like me and you, where our public personas are so tied to success. And it's so tied into that. The pressure feels really, really just, it's been put in a pressure cooker. But I think part of the journey is, it's not a single project. It is a lifelong passion. It's a lifelong career, and it's always going to be like that. Right? Talking to basketball terms, 82 games in a season, you're not going to win them all.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So it's a really interesting one. Okay. My next question is, what are you most proud of in your career?
So I think getting to where I am now, like putting myself in situation where I didn't listen to some people who would be like, you shouldn't switch jobs every 2 years. You should stay a bit longer. Yeah, haters or like just, being like, it wasn't that common a few years ago to like change jobs that often. Obviously, it was not every 6 months. I still spent like almost 2 years every time, but I felt like because the marketing industry was evolving fast, I had to evolve fast as well to put myself in position where I could learn new things and advance as fast as it's advancing. So I think what I'm the most proud of is having done that, which means that now, 6-7 years down the line, which is quite short, being positioned as a CMO in a successful fintech company is like amazing.
That's awesome.
Like I sometimes I just I wake up and realize I'm like, this is crazy.
That's so cool though, because it goes to show that even if you can't articulate it, just trusting your gut, knowing that things are moving quickly, and if you stay in especially at that time with marketing where it was evolving so much, if you stayed in a company with an old school mentality, could have been you.
Yeah.
Really,
Absolutely.
really interesting. Okay, and my last question for you is, what does it take to be successful?
I thought about this one a little bit. I think it's putting the reps, it's like going back to like sports analogy or whatever, they say you have to spend 10,000 hours on something to get quite good at it and like start to like become an expert. Become an expert or like some sort of an expert. So like it's just putting the times into really understanding what you're doing, really like deeply and moving with it. Like I do that constantly. Like even at this stage in my career, like I feel like I'm still doing so much research on like who's doing what in which industry, which are the new tactics and new channels, and like I don't wait and see. Like I proactively trying to push further. So I spend a lot of time on like just trying things, even as a CMO, and that's why I like to also work like as a CMO in a smaller company, because I still get to do a lot of things. I don't think I'm yet at that stage where I could just rely on people telling me, what, like in a more indirect way, and then just managing people. I'm not there yet. I think I still need to have my fingers on the pulse, So yeah, I think that's what it takes, being curious and just really spending the hours to understand something, and then it work.
That's awesome. Thank you, Yoann. Yoann, where can people hit you up, reach out to you? Where can they learn about Nude?
So LinkedIn, I think, is the main channel. Yoann Pavy, that's my profile. For Nude, you go getnude.com. That's the website. Find us on the App Store. Soon on Android as well. Working on it. Send me a message.
Amazing, Yoann. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roy. No worries.